Hello, welcome to Opa Ghost,
I'm Heaven,
and I'm Jonathan.
and today we're going to tell you about the Bridgewater Triangle.
Indeed, we are.
Okay, so you're going to be proud of me. First, I'm just going to tell you the resources that I used were trusty old Wikipedia, bostonghost.com, and I watched a Bridgewater Triangle documentary on Amazon Prime that was like 3 hours long.
3 hours
It was
long.
ridiculous. I didn't finish it. I got what I needed and I turned it off.
There's one I saw that I watched that I've seen before, but I rewatched it for this one. That was only about an hour and a half long, and it was called The Bridgewater Documentary or Bridgewater Triangle Documentary. That's the title of it.
Maybe it was the same one and I'm just over exaggerating because I think that's
Maybe.
what this one was called as well.
I also read this book by which sounds impressive because I said I read a book, but it's not really that long. And the font's like a size 18. But it's called Dover Demon and Pukwudgies by George Dudding. It's he didn't have enough to write a full book on the Dover Demon or Pukwudgies, so he just put them in the same book. And the guy's got like, if they're all the size of this, I understand why, but he's got like 60 books.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, but again, this thing is 59 pages, 60 pages,
That's not
and with
bad.
giant font with some pictures too, because God knows I enjoy a good picture.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about demons and pukwudgies. So the Bridgewater Triangle is located in the southeastern portion of Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, is kind of shaped like if you make like an L with your right hand and then turn it so your thumb's pointing down. So there's like this
Okay.
long part at the top, and then at the bottom is down around Cape Cod is where the Bridgewater Triangle is. It's not very big. It's like 200 square miles. It's an isosceles triangle, so it's like narrow
I
on the
thought it was
bottom and long on top.
an acute triangle. Is it
Well,
not?
it probably depends on if it was. The thing is,
Is
it's
this a
kind
map
of
podcast?
probably right. So it's sitting sideways on a map, so it's hard to tell. But it's narrow base, long at the top. It's only about 13 miles wide as
Oh,
the
wow.
crow flies between those two towns, and then about 27, 28-ish miles up to Abington, which is the northern triangle. But it's not just in the triangle; it's all the surrounding area. It's not
Well, yeah, I
necessarily
guess that's
contained.
true. Like it doesn't stop at the imaginary lines of the triangle.
Right. Because I mean, like the Freetown Fall River State Park is actually mostly not inside that geographic
Oh,
triangle as much as
wow.
it's right along the edge of it.
You you looked at the map harder than I did. I
I'm
had no idea.
spatial. I'm spatially aware that way, I suppose.
So their main theory on like what the root cause for the paranormal activity is the mistreatment of the Native Americans in the area. It goes back to this thing called the King Philip's War, which went from 1675 to 1676. King Philip was the name that the chief of the Wampanoag just adopted. He had greeted the first colonists of New England and he sort of developed a relationship with them. But then in 1675, the Plymouth colony executed three of Philip's warriors. There were like other things that had been going on, fighting over land, the fishing grounds where the colonists could let their sheep graze. So it just kind of been building up to the point where they just like that was the last straw.
Right. Things hit the roof finally, and
Yeah, and then the Native Americans of the Wampanoag just kind of rebelled. They say it was really, really brutal. There was a lot of bloodshed. And then in 1676, King Philip was captured and beheaded, and his head was kept on a spike for 20 years in Plymouth.
really.
Yeah.
Well, how's that for a brutal reminder of why you hate these people?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
All the surviving natives were rounded up and they were sold into slavery.
Wow.
There was a little fact that said it was the bloodiest conflict per capita in American history, but I don't know what per capita means.
Per the number of people there, the percentage of deaths would have been high.
Oh, okay.
I think is what the per capita is getting at. I read a thing that said that it was pre-colonization. It was the probably that area was probably the most densely populated.
Oh,
If you were 1,000 feet from any body of water, that was likely occupied by Native Americans at some point.
that makes sense. Yeah, they said there were thousands of lives lost. Some people say that it's a Native American curse because of all this that is to blame for the activity. But some people say that King Philip's War was just another thing caused by the Bridgewater Triangle.
Oh, so they're saying that the
It
bloodshed
goes
and
back
everything
further.
was, yeah, well, and in some of this, I'm going to talk about the pukwudgies later, but that's part of that is that, thousands of years ago there was this dispute between, we'll call them gods, I guess. I'm that's probably not accurate, but that kind of made things rough in that area. So yeah,
Hmm.
I can see why somebody might say that it goes back even farther, but something tells me white man comes to America and does what white man does when he comes to America, and that has nothing to do with curses as much as greed. You
That's
know,
true. Yeah.
that's all about the greed and
Yeah.
land. That's all it was about.
Like you said, within the triangle, we have the swamps. I think there's more than one swamp, but the most famous one is the Hockomock Swamp,
Mm-hmm.
which originates from the Native American word meaning place where spirits dwell. So that's a little creepy. And then we've got large haunted state forests, haunted cemeteries, asylums, really any kind of haunted place. They seem to have it in the Bridgewater Triangle.
Yeah, I saw a thing that East Bridgewater is especially haunted for whatever reason.
Yeah, I saw that, but I didn't look into it. They've got literally like all of the cryptids, any type of sighting. They have Bigfoot sightings,
Mm-hmm.
thunderbirds, giant snakes, Mansfield mystery cat, a giant killer dog, UFO sightings, your famous pukwudgie that you love so much,
Right.
and then a ton of ghost lights all over the place.
Ghost lights, UFOs, satanic cults.
Yeah, I didn't touch too much on the cults. I wasn't sure about them. I don't know about you, but I kind of found it hard when I was trying to find like a ghost story for Bridgewater because there were a ton of sightings, but there wasn't anything that you could find a lot on a specific haunting. I found that they're in the town of Rehoboth, which I think is one of the points of the triangle, right?
Yes.
They have a cemetery that's supposed to be very, very haunted. They have a little boy who dances on gravestones and he asks people, please stay with me, which was just
Ooh,
really
that's
sad.
creepy and
I know.
sad. Yeah. Of
They also have a woman in white, which
course
everyone
they do.
does.
Right.
They have a man in dark clothing who pounds at the ground, crying and wailing.
Wow.
They have a vapor form that comes from the woods and moves about the cemetery. They've got your average balls of light. And they have a colonial soldier who was once seen looking confused just wandering around the tombstones.
I'm a little surprised that given the war that happened there, like in Gettysburg, there's all kinds of ghosts,
Hmm.
I'm surprised that they don't have more of that.
Yeah, in Gettysburg, you almost see like the war being reenacted through the ghosts.
Yeah, I mean, there's also reenactments going on all the time too, and
That's
that's
true.
I'm sure that's charging the atmosphere, if you will. So you probably don't get that in in Bridgewater. They're not reenacting the slaughter of Native Americans. So,
God, let's hope not.
geez.
They also had a lady I saw, I don't think it was on the documentary. I think this was just me browsing, looking around on the internet, and she had an EVP that she had got out there of a lady that was singing, and it was just like a la 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 la. But when I listened to it, it just sounded like a bird.
Right. It's hard. Sometimes those EVPs, when you hear them on when you're listening to them through television, they're sitting there on the other side of the camera telling you, oh, it's saying this and it's clearly this. And then when you hear it, it doesn't sound like that at all. It sounds
Mm-mm.
like something else. And I don't know if they just don't translate well through the audio or if it's wishful thinking on their part or what it is. But sometimes I'm with you on that. Sometimes I can't hear what it is they say they're saying.
Yeah, and if you hear it in real time, then I get it. But when you have it on those recorders, it just sounds all choppy and
Yeah.
yeah. And then there was the Hornbein School that was built in the 1840s.
Oh,
It was
yeah,
a
yeah.
one-room schoolhouse. The story was that a teacher who did not work there, she just went to visit the school.
As a tourist.
Yeah, as a tourist. And when she looked in the windows, she saw a whole school room full of children being taught.
What?
So she went around to the door and tried to get in to go say hi to them, but the door was locked. So she went back to the window and she said the teacher was just staring back at her while all the children just faded away.
How dare you interrupt our ghost class? That would freak, I think that would freak you out if you looked in there and the teacher's giving you the stink eye, and while that's going on, like, sorry, no.
Yeah, that would be terrifying. Although I think I would actually kind of like an experience like that, a whole group of children. You get to see 30 ghosts instead of just one ghost.
Yeah. But I mean, the fact that they all just kind of fade away while the teacher's giving you the stink eye, that might be kind of scary. But at the same
Yeah,
time,
the teacher makes it kind of scary.
yeah, I mean, I'd be like right
Almost
there
like
going,
she's like some sort of
sorry.
demon teacher who's like collected all these souls and it's
I
creepy.
mean, I could see somebody running like hell from that, but at the same time, I mean, I'm with you. I'd be right there up against the glass. But then what do you say? You got to go tell somebody what you just saw, and they're all going to be like, bullshit. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. If you don't have a camera on you.
Yeah, that's a tough sell. Not only did I see a ghost, I saw 30 or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's creepy. Well, my main little thing I want to talk about, because I mean, we could talk about experiences in the Bridgewater Triangle for hours and hours, but I'm going to stick to the area of Taunton. And that's where the Freetown State Forest is, where all those supposed satanic rituals took place.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very far from the Hockomock Swamp. I do know that much.
Yeah, the Hockomock Swamp's just on the north side of town, really.
Mhm. But it's also home to one of my favorite types of haunted places, the Taunton Hospital of the Insane,
Ah,
which we have to get into a haunted hospital sometime.
I agree. Just finding one in the area that's
Yeah.
not a 6-hour drive, you know?
Yeah, like that one in Missouri. I found that it was under several different names online because obviously the Taunton Hospital of the Insane isn't the nicest way to say something nowadays.
Yeah, probably every 20, 30 years they change it to whatever the new correct term is, you know?
Yeah, some places called it the State Lunatic Hospital. Others just called it Taunton State Hospital. But all the things I read, they all called it incredibly haunted. It's located along the Mill River, was built in 1854, and it was only the second asylum ever built in Massachusetts. Not only did it house hundreds and hundreds of psychiatric patients, it also held a couple notorious serial killers. At one time, it had over 40 structures, so really freaking huge.
Yeah, that's a complex. That's not just a building.
Their main building was called Kirkbride. It closed in 1975, and then the rest of the buildings obviously fell into disrepair after it closed.
Right, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that's how it always goes.
Yeah, a lot of times it's like the mid to late 70s and the late 80s, all these things started closing down. And
Yep. And now if you go there, most of the buildings have either been demolished or they've burned down, arsons and stuff like that. I know it's a paranormal podcast, but we're gonna just get a little true crimey for just a second.
go for
Because
it.
I want to tell you a couple of the patients that were there.
Nothing makes ghosts like murder and mayhem.
There was an Italian man named Anthony Santo. He confessed to the murder of his two cousins and another little girl, and he stated he went into mad spells with uncontrollable anger. Later on, he was diagnosed with hallucinations and he was sent to Taunton. Because back then, you could just be diagnosed with hallucinations instead of
I mean, if you're having them.
or whatever it is. There was also Jolly Jane. Her real name was Honora Kelly.
Why? Jolly Jane.
Yeah, I don't
Her
know.
real name's Honora. I mean, how they go from that to Jane?
It makes no sense to me. She spent most of her life in asylums because her mom died when she was young, and then her dad just abandoned her and her sister at an asylum.
That sounds horrific.
From what I read, he just was like, this is too much. And he just, instead of an orphanage, he put them in an asylum for children, which is strange.
Which is a fancy word for orphanage.
I guess. Very weird.
Orphanage with the opportunity for electrical shock therapy.
Oh my gosh. That's really, really sad. It's okay if you shock the adults, but the children, come on.
Right. I mean, got to do what you got to do.
I guess. Somehow she became a nurse. I don't know really how.
Well, I mean, she had spent all this time. She had the experience.
I guess, but you wouldn't think she'd be fully mentally qualified, but whatever. She took a liking to old and frail patients that she could experiment on.
Oh,
Eventually, one of the patients she poisoned had a toxicology report done on them, and she ended up confessing to 31 murders.
wow.
Yeah.
Serial killer.
Uh-huh. But actually, the hauntings, they say, started while the hospital was still open. The staff would report feeling uneasy in the lower levels of the basement. One report that said when they would try to go into the basement, they would feel a force, almost like a pressure pushing on their chest, stopping them from going any further.
Interesting.
Most of the reports on the hauntings suggest that the hospital is haunted by the spirits of the patients who are subjected to evil experiments. A couple sites said the rumors of the hospital are that the doctors pretty much had full liberty to do whatever they wanted to their patients. Supposedly, staff in the 70s before it closed were so uncomfortable by the things that they were experiencing that they dug around into the hospital records and they did find evidence that an inner circle of doctors were conducting experiments on their patients. Now the
Wow.
experiences that are just that locals around there just hear disembodied screams coming from the hospital.
I think most any hospital is probably haunted.
Well, especially back then. I mean,
Oh yeah.
a
Well,
lot
I
of things
mean,
were allowed to happen in mental hospitals.
right, right. That's true. That's true. They were unethical places for sure.
They were very unethical. There's also claims of shadows that crawl up the freaking walls and
Yeah,
onto
that
the
sounds about
ceilings.
right.
I
That
don't
sounds about
ever
right.
want to see that. That's like horror movie level, and that's not the paranormal I'm in for.
That's you're not in.
No, it's very urban legend, and I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
there for
yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah. It's very Hollywood, person crawling with their, in a arched back sort of situation.
There was also a note that said local folklore is that Lizzie Borden was a resident at the hospital temporarily, but there's no evidence of that at all. It's just local folklore. And
Right, who
she
knows?
did stay in the jail next door.
I mean, Lizzie Borden's part of the whole, that whole thing is just down the street. So it's all part
Yeah,
of it's just around the corner from the
all the
Bridgewater
area.
Triangle. So yeah.
And I was also going to tell you about another state lunatic asylum, the Danvers State Lunatic Asylum,
Hmm.
but I did all the research and then I realized it's nowhere near the Bridgewater Triangle. So I'm going to
How
save
far
those
away is
notes
it?
for another, like at the top of Massachusetts.
Oh, so way, way, way up
It's a
north.
way up there. So we'll just
Okay.
save those notes for another episode.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's really all the ghost stuff I have to tell you about in the Bridgewater Triangle.
Well, maybe I should tell you about the pukwudgie. It's part of Native American folklore, especially it seems that based on what I've read, that it's really has to do with the Algonquins, or not so much the tribe, but anyone who speaks Algonquin. I guess Algonquin is not just only a tribe, but a language. And so anyone that's part of the Delaware, the Chippewa, the Mohican, the Ojibwe, and the Wampanoags all have some kind of pukwudgie.
Have I been saying that wrong this whole time?
Would you say?
I think I said Wampanoag.
I've heard it both ways.
Okay,
I've heard
good.
it both
As long as
ways.
I'm not the only one in the world who says it that way.
No, I've heard it both ways.
Okay, good.
I didn't remember how you had said it, or I would have said it the same way for continuity's sake.
Oh well.
There are more than 40 names associated with that. That book I showed you, there's a
With
list
the
in there.
Pukwudgie?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I guess it depending on I don't know because I don't know, but it might have to do with how you see it and the conditions. But yeah, there's more than 40 names associated with the pukwudgie, and
Oh
some of them
wow.
are real close to pukwudgies. Some of them are. I'm going to flip through here. I'm not even going to try to butcher that, but like pukwudgieni, pukwudgiemin.
So do you think some of it is just like maybe the different ways that tribes said it, like in their
Probably.
own tribal language?
I mean, there's one here that it's Pukwudgee, and then the next one is spelled exactly the same, except it's GIE. So, and then there's
Oh.
another one just exactly like it, except there's a hyphen between puck, wud, and G. So, I think it might be spelling, it might be, but
So
all
it's
these,
more like puck wedgie, not puck wedgie, like a
yeah,
like a wedgie.
yeah, no, it's pukwudgie.
Oh, okay, okay. Learning new things already.
Yeah, there you go. There's some that are like the Bagadzunini, and I mean, there's all
Oh
kinds of.
my.
I'm not even going to try to butcher these names because that's exactly what would happen. But
Yeah.
yeah, over 40 names. Pukwudgie itself translates to person of the wilderness,
Oh,
which makes sense because that's where, one sees these things.
yeah, that does track.
According to ancient legend, the Pukwudgie can appear and disappear at will. It's a shapeshifter. The most common form is this creature that looks like a porcupine from the back and a half troll, half human type thing from the front.
What?
Yeah. So I'm thinking those trolls from what's the
The movie Trolls?
yeah, no, from Frozen, the trolls, the rock
I've
trolls
never
that they
seen
go.
Frozen.
Oh, well, there you go. You're not missing a lot, but now I've got people who like to sing the songs are going to be angry with me, but there's these like troll things that look, they're from the back, they're rocks, but then they stand up and turn around and they're trolls, and that's kind of what I envision. I'm sure it's not.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure the
That's
ancient,
creepy. I don't like that at all.
yeah, Native American lore was probably not thinking of Disney when they
No, I
did
don't
this,
think
but
so.
maybe Disney was thinking of Native American lore. Who knows?
That's very possible.
They can lure people to their death, use magic, launch poison arrows, create fire, all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
I think originally the Pukwudgies were friendly to humans, would help them, kind of, oh, I can't find, well, they didn't have keys, but I can't find my keys, and they would appear, and the Pukwudgies would have helped you. But they turn against humans and are considered to be best left alone.
Yeah, I'd say so. They're creepy.
Well, again, I took notes on it, and then I got rid of it because I figured it was too much. But they started with there's this the Wampanoags had a person that was like the a hero and a giant, and the Pukwudgies were jealous that the Wampanoags had loved this other one so much that they kind of got into an argument with this guy and lost for the most part. They were exiled out of whatever area they were in, and that kind of really set the Pukwudgies off, and
Oh, wow.
they've been evil ever since. But they were still kind of considered to be tricksters. They weren't necessarily always nasty, even though they were kind of rumored to kidnap people or push you off a cliff or
What in the
yeah.
world?
If you, I'm sure when you watched that documentary you saw the story about the cliff, the 100-foot cliff that was there.
Yeah, you keep trying to convince me that they were kind and they sound horrid.
I think that originally, in some instances, they are, but they kind of became. There's this discrepancy in the lore between what the Wampanoag say and what other things say, and it kind of goes back and forth where they're kind of good guys and then they're bad guys, and then I think generally speaking, the Native Americans consider them something you don't want to mess with, and you just want to leave them alone and
Yeah,
have them leave you alone.
I'd say so.
In terms of Massachusetts, they're pretty much confined to, well, all corners of Massachusetts and anywhere where Algonquin speaking nations exist or existed.
Wow.
They seem to really be kind of focused on that Freetown Fall River State Forest area and the swamp, the Hockomock Swamp area. There are some in Indiana.
What?
Yeah, the Delaware Indians were forced westward, when white men decided he wanted their land, and
Forced into Indiana?
well, they were forced west, and that's just kind of where they settled. And of course, when they went, they took their traditions and folklore with them, which includes the Pukwudgie. So
Oh, that makes sense. So that now they say that they see them in Indiana in the lore?
the book that I was talked about earlier, there was some mention of a guy who saw them, I think in like 1920s, something like that. So
So what's to say they can't just travel their little bodies all the way over to us in Illinois?
I mean, nothing really, except
That's
that's
terrifying. I don't
not
want
a
to see a
lot to see
pukwudgie.
between here and there.
Well, that's true. Travel the interstate.
Right. I mean, there's some of the other things I've read. There's versions of the Pukwudgie that are called different things. There was one in Texas. There's some in Canada. But again, if you look at like a First Nations map and you start looking at Algonquin speaking stuff, you'll see that they cover a large area, and so any place where there's Algonquin speaking people, they probably have some version of the Pukwudgie legend in there with them. So wherever they are, it's there. So
That's creepy.
originally considered to be mischievous in the same way that modern people might refer to gremlins when when their car's not working right, to explain any kind of unexplained problem.
What are you talking about?
Have you never heard Gremlins before? I mean, I know
The
you know the
only thing I
movie.
know is the movie.
Yeah. Well, Gremlins were like, especially like during the wars.
They would mess with your cars?
Well, no, it was just kind of a way to explain if you had mechanical trouble or something, it was, oh, it's the Gremlins are doing it.
You come from a weird time.
Apparently. It was a weird time. It was the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
They were kind of like that. They were this, forest sprite that caused mischief and
Yeah.
inconvenience. But then at some point, they go from being the playful trickster to something more aligned with evil. And then even more so when the Europeans show up and they start Christianizing the natives, they became the foot soldier of the devil at that point. So
Right.
in terms of an actual description, they're supposed to have human-like features and large noses, fingers, and ears, kind of a caricature of a human face. Gray skin, smooth gray skin, said to possess magical powers, have the ability again to disappear and even to glow in the dark. And supposedly they control these. They call them spook lights in the documentary, but they're basically orbs.
The pukwudgies control them?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah, that's what they're saying. And the
They
funny
glow in the
thing,
dark.
they can. They don't necessarily. I think they can when they want
Oh
to.
my.
But they have these orbs of light. They call them the Tai Pai Wonkas. In fact, there's a dog track in the Taunton dog track, which is east of town on the edge of the Hockomock Swamp. Well, the dog track isn't even a dog track anymore. They outlawed, dog racing a
Right.
while back. But behind the dog track is an abandoned railroad track. And people see the quote spook lights through there all the time. These spook lights sound like the orb lights that the pukwudgies either can control or can turn into. Which
Wow.
one it is, it's kind of in the air. The
I had no idea they were so complex.
Oh yeah, they're a thing. In fact,
I just thought they were little Bigfoots running around terrorizing things.
no. It's more than that. It's kind of, there was an episode of I think it was Portals to Hell with Jack Osborne and Katrina Wildman. They had somebody who was having some sort of issue, and they were blaming it on the pukwudgie and told them to, right at the edge of the forest, where the edge of the forest meets your property, to plant some strawberries and announce to the pukwudgies that those are for them, and then just leave them for them and let them be wild.
Oh, well, I like that. Strawberries
Yes.
make them happy and they will leave them
Yeah. It's
alone.
like, here's a gift for you. Your gift for me will be to leave me the hell alone.
Hopefully they're listening and they can
Right.
hear you.
They gave the impression that on that particular episode that the pukwudgie was more like a forest elemental type thing.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, which is a very, European, British, English, Scottish,
That's
Irish
true.
kind of way
Yeah.
of coming at it. There was an author from the area named James Rice, and when he was a kid, he saw these lights. He and some friends went to a place that they call the Indian Bridge in the Elm Street section of Bridgewater. They're out there playing around and they see these lights coming up the river, and they just assume it's a hunter in a canoe with a lantern or some people out night fishing or something.
Right, as you would.
Yeah, right. So then as the canoe or the lights get closer and get, kind of come into a clearing, there is no canoe, there's no hunter, there's just these lights.
Wow.
They described them as being like the size of a baseball.
Oh, okay.
So they start shouting out the colors to each other, what colors they were, orange and blue and whatever, just to kind of validate among themselves that they were all seeing the same thing. This James guy says that they seem to be sentient, they seem to be playing, they almost seemed as if they wanted us to see them. After a few minutes, they just grew faint, they went back upstream and they disappeared.
So they really just came out to play. That's interesting.
Yeah. I don't
Like there was no threat. They didn't feel worried about them or anything.
I mean, they were kids. I would have thought if they thought it was scary, they would have ran away,
Yeah.
because that's what you do when you're a kid. You scream like kids and you run.
Have you ever seen a spook light?
I have never seen spook lights, but I mean, the thing about spook lights in the pukwudgie lore, they're associated as being one and the same thing, and
Yeah.
or at least controlled by. But I mean, there's spook lights
All over. They say they're in cemeteries all over.
Yeah, that's like a worldwide phenomenon.
That
So
would be a really interesting thing to see.
yeah, Some believe that the pukwudgie is controlled by a darker shadow-like force.
I don't like that.
Yeah, well, like almost like a shadow person that's there that either controls them or is just interested in what they're doing, and so they're observing them.
Mm.
Again, there's conflict in there about what really happens. One guy on I think it was on that documentary actually said that you can't, for it to be a real pukwudgie experience, the other elements have to be there, the dark shadow guy and the orbs.
Well,
So
that's kind of stupid, but
yeah,
okay.
you got to have the lights in the shadow or it doesn't
Sorry,
count.
your pukwudgie experience was not as good as mine. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's the thing though, some of these people that have had encounters don't have that stuff. Like in 1990, a guy named William Russo in the Raynham area, again located right on the edge of the Hockomock Swamp, out walking his dog. It was in one of those areas where when they put up power lines through the forest, they cut the forest down to make like this area just for the power lines, this
Yeah,
wide
we have that
almost.
around here, like on all the bike trails and
Yeah,
stuff.
like a fire break or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So anyway, so he's walking through there and comes out on a near a street and there's a light there and the dog becomes kind of frightened and he can't figure out what's going on. The dog's pulling at the leash and he hears this high-pitched voice saying, Ewan Cho, Ewan Cho,
Ugh, I hate
Kia,
that.
Kia. Yeah, well, yeah, that would be weird for sure. But
Yeah.
he says this thing walks out into the light. It's 3 or 4 feet tall, has a pot belly, covered in hair, had eyes that were slightly too big for its head. He says at first he thought it was a child, but it wasn't threatening, but it was kept beckoning to him and calling to him. And so, like to get into its space, like he wanted him to come over to him. And he said that he wished he was brave enough to do it, but he ended up,
No.
he was a little freaked out. And so he and the dog walked away as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
I don't know where he gets his information or what makes him think so, but he later decides that this thing was trying to speak English to him and that Iwan Chu or Iwan Cho means we want you.
No, it sounds like it.
Yeah. So, and that Kia means come here. Eventually he goes back a couple of times, or he said many times, but he never saw it again.
Yeah, I think it was a baby Bigfoot.
You think?
Yeah, I don't think that was a pukwudgie because he said it had hair.
Yeah, he said it was hairy, but he also didn't describe the face in the way that most
That's
Bigfoots
true. He
are.
did say it kind of looked like a chipmunk face.
Yeah, but it sounds like, a pukwudgie, if we kind of take all the combination of all this folklore, they're shapeshifters. So that
Yeah,
realistically
that's
they
true.
could.
And trying to speak English to you is very like trickstery.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think they're all kind of these mischievous trickster type
But
things.
so
And
what would it
so
have done if he had gone up to it?
that's a good question. That's a really good.
Taken him
Well,
captive?
one thing I read said that they can kind of hypnotize you into
No.
walking with them and that they could lead you to trouble, or one thing said that they can lead you to safety, like if you're lost in the woods they might lead you to safety, and
Oh,
others said if you're
okay.
lost in the woods they might lead you to your death. So
Well, I mean, if you're wandering the woods walking your dog at midnight, which is kind of a stupid idea in my opinion, I could see why he would think you were lost in the woods and he needed to lead you to safety.
it's possible, but you're standing on a road that has a street light. So
Oh, I thought you said he was out in the woods.
well, he was walking through this fire break in the where the power lines run, and then he comes up to a street where this fire break intersects a street.
Never mind, he's not lost in the woods.
There you go. There was another woman though who was in the woods again out walking her dog. Her name was Joan in the
That's
books.
interesting. Maybe they like dogs.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too. If the common denominator here, at least in these two stories, is dog. So
Hmm.
she is in the Freetown Fall River State Park though, and he was up in Taunton.
No.
It was a cold Sunday in April. So the dog began to tug on the leash and dragged her in the woods. And when they finally stopped, she saw a 2 foot tall humanoid with short legs and a human like face with exaggerated features.
Okay.
So they kind of just stood there and stared at each other for a few seconds. And the dog finally starts kind of pulling her away back towards the path. And so she goes. And after that, they went home. But then the creatures started showing up at her house every night for a couple of
Stop
weeks.
it,
Nope.
Jonathan.
I'm telling you, I'm just
No,
reporting the
I don't like
facts.
this at all.
I'm reporting the facts.
He did not follow her home.
Yes, comes to her house at night for about 2 weeks, pecking at her window and staring in her bedroom window.
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
Not only is he a weirdo, he's a pervert. So
He's a
uh,
peeping a peeping pukwudgie.
he's a peeping pukwudgie.
Oh my God, I hate this story.
She ends up moving away. Never,
Yeah.
yeah. So never saw him again after that, though. So
So he didn't follow her to her new house at least. Oh my
right,
God. I don't know what I would do. I don't know. That's so scary.
yeah. Let's assume this is true that she really did have this. What do you do? What can you do?
I don't know. You can't call the police and tell them there's a 2-foot humanoid poking at your window. That's
Well, you
weird.
could, but
They're gonna laugh at you.
yeah,
I don't know. That's creepy. I would just
yeah.
call you.
And I'd be like, plant some strawberries. That's what Jack did.
That's what Jack did. Strawberries are the answer.
Your answer is strawberries.
You sound like chapstick.
Right. Chapstick. So the only other thing that's even in the area that I could find, at least in the books. The funny thing is the documentary and the book I read both had the same accounts of the same, mostly the same accounts anyway. I don't think the Jack Rice story was in the book, but
Hmm.
the or the James Rice story rather, there was the famous Dover demon, which Dover is about 25 miles north of the triangle, but it's kind of a similar thing where they see this small 3 foot, 4 foot tall thing. Only this one is a little bit different, has an egg-shaped head, orange glowing eyes. At least I don't know if they were glowing because of the lights of the car that hit them or if they were glowing because they were glowing. The
Because
thing
it's
is
like
that
a deer in headlights.
right, exactly. So it didn't have a nose or mouth or ears that they could see. Very large hands and feet with skinny fingers that could like grip like a monkey. The guy that originally saw it was like 10 feet away. There was
Wow.
a number of other sightings all around, even as far away as Cape Cod, but like multiple sightings over a few different nights in Dover when this happened. Dover's a small town too. It'd be like, seeing one around where we live.
Yeah.
Kid that saw it was an art student, so of course he drew a picture and other people drew pictures of what they saw, and once the pictures kind of started coming out, everybody brought out their picture, and of course they all match. And there's question about, was it a hoax? Some people say it was an alien, some people think it
I
might have
mean,
been
to
a
coordinate
pukwudgie.
that many people to draw a similar picture, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, really. I mean, but again, we're talking about a small town. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
small town that these people grew up in their entire life, so everybody knew everybody, but nobody
Yeah.
was talking about this because you'd look
Because you
like a
don't want to feel
crazy
like a
person.
crate. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so
That's really creepy.
but
Did
yeah,
did
that's
you hear something behind you? Is there a ghost in your basement?
no, my son just came down the stairs.
Oh, oof. Thought the pukwudgie was in.
The pukwudgie's here. I've got strawberries, it's good.
Okay.
So the Bridgeport Triangle,
No?
or sorry, the Bridgewater Triangle. I
Yeah.
get it confused with the Bridgeport Poltergeist, which we might do an episode
I
on
don't know
another
what
day.
that is either. I'm learning so many new things from you. I thought I was well versed and I'm not, but I'm learning. We're getting
Well,
there.
you covered the ghosty stuff. I figured as much stuff that goes on in Bridgeport, we got to cover
Oh my
something
God,
else.
Bridgewater.
Oh, so sorry, Bridgewater. I'm sorry. My
Your mind
apologies
is
to the
really
people
on
of
this Bridgeport.
Massachusetts, and well, Bridgeport's over on the East Coast too. So
So I have a question. Why is the East Coast so full of cryptids? Like, what is it about there that there's so many of these, like the Jersey Devil and all of those things? All we have is Bigfoot.
well, a lot of those are associated with, the Jersey Devil was a lady that, she gave birth to a devil child. It's like the Salem era, and, which is right there in Massachusetts too, by the way, just north of Boston. So, all that kind of area. I
I
think we
guess the
have,
witchy stuff probably has something to do with it.
yeah, we have Bigfoot. We have
We have Bigfoot. That's all we
we have
have.
Thunderbirds. There was a Thunderbird
That's
outbreak in
true. That's not
in
nearly
in
as cool as a
Illinois.
pukwudgie.
A giant bird that tried to carry away a child. Yeah, you're right. That's not cool at
It's
all.
not. It's just a big bird. Nobody cares. We have Mothman in Chicago, but
Eh,
That's about it. Don't
that's it.
don't you
Yeah.
am my Mothman.
I know. I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, I think that's all we have on the Bridgewater Triangle for today.
So here's a question.
Oh, you got
Are
more?
Yeah, one other thing. Are there other triangles?
There's the Bermuda Triangle.
Right, everybody knows that one. But did you know about the Nevada Triangle?
No.
The Nevada Triangle
Nevada's
is,
kind of creepy. Like that deserty land, there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on out there.
oh yeah. I mean, it's a dumping ground for bodies.
Oh, that's yeah, back to the true crime.
But the Nevada Triangle runs from Reno, Las Vegas, and Fresno, California. And there's something like 2,000 individual aircraft crashes in that area. Area 51 is right along the edge of it.
So it's more like the Bermuda Triangle than the Bridgewater Triangle, where things are actually affected within it instead of just weird experiences.
Right. I mean, there's not much out there. So I'm sure that, I mean, Nevada's full of ghost towns that are haunted. I mean, watch, there's a YouTube channel called The Haunted Side, and he's from out in that area, and he's always going to some ghost town or something. But yeah, that's out in that
Is
area.
that the
So,
is there more?
oh yeah, there's the Bass Straits in Australia. There's the Bass Straits Triangle, which if you go to the southern tip of
I'm not
Australia.
messing with any paranormal things in Australia.
Yeah, well, there's this like stretch of water that goes between Tasmania and Australia, and so it's called the Bass Straits, and so there's a triangle there. Now, I will say that no one, for the most part, considers it to be paranormal as much as it's just a dangerous section of water. But again, you've got this incredibly high frequency of, air and boat traffic that has disappeared. There's the Bennington Triangle, which was in Vermont, where there was a ton of
Back on the
missing
East
persons
Coast.
back on the East Coast. The Lake Michigan Triangle.
Really?
Yep. Tons of shipwrecks and plane crashes, UFOs, the whole nine yards.
Loch Ness Monster?
Yeah. Over in England, there's the Welsh Triangle. And of course, most recently, people have talked about, because it's a Travel Channel show, is the Alaska Triangle. But again, tons of plane crashes, missing persons, UFOs, Bigfoot. There's a few others too, but those are probably the most interesting. Most of them have to do with plane crashes and UFO sightings and but
Yeah.
other things. The thing I think that sets Bridgewater apart is that it's relatively small, but for such a small area, there's tons of stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's literally anything that you could think of. They have all the cryptids, they have all the hauntings. They've got it all in that little area.
Yeah, so Bridgewater
There
Triangle.
you go. Look at you saying it right.
I knew I'd get it.
All right. Well, and I think that's all for today then.
All right. Join us next time. Thanks for listening.
Toodles.